Some people say employees are the backbone of any company, while some believe that they are disposable. This story is about a man who decided to put himself out there like the ordinary, everyday person to get a different perspective about life. The early morning chill enveloped the city streets as Alexander Hunt, the CEO of Hunt Tech Industries, adjusted the oversized, tattered coat he'd bought from a thrift store the day before. His sharp blue suit and polished leather shoes had been replaced by scuffed boots and second-hand clothes. For the next 2 weeks, Alexander would live as a homeless man, a decision sparked by a disconcerting realization: his billion-dollar company was losing its connection to its customers and employees. Alexander Hunt is a white man in his early 40s, known for his sharp intellect, commanding presence, and a reputation for being a savvy businessman. He was the CEO and founder of Hunt Tech Industries, a multi-billion-dollar tech company specializing in cutting-edge AI software, digital security solutions, and cloud-based services. Hunt Tech had a reputation for innovation but had recently drawn criticism for prioritizing profit margins over employee welfare and community engagement. As always, we count on your support for the growth of this channel. Please hit the subscribe button before we continue with this story, and do not forget to turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories. Thank you. Alexander's rise to CEO was not a straightforward journey. He grew up in a working-class family in a small Midwestern town where his father worked as a mechanic and his mother managed a local diner. As the eldest of 3 siblings, Alexander shouldered many responsibilities early in life, helping his family make ends meet while excelling academically. In his teenage years, he developed a passion for computers, teaching himself programming and later earning scholarships to attend a prestigious university. After graduating, Alexander launched a small tech startup in his garage, bootstrapping it with savings and a grant he won for an innovative AI project. Through relentless work and smart partnerships, that startup evolved into Hunt Tech Industries within a decade. Though Alexander's professional life was a remarkable success, his personal life was more complicated. He had married his college sweetheart, Lauren, but their relationship became strained over the years due to Alexander's workaholic tendencies. They had one daughter, Ella, a bright and curious 12-year-old who often felt the sting of her father's absence but deeply admired his passion for innovation. It was Ella's innocent questions and pointed observations about fairness and empathy that often lingered in Alexander's mind. She once asked him why he didn't help people like Grandpa when he was busy creating tech solutions. It was her words, and a growing unease about his company's direction, that pushed him to take the drastic step of pretending to be homeless. Stepping out of the back alley he had chosen as a temporary shelter, Alexander felt a surge of vulnerability. For the first time, he wasn't protected by his wealth, his title, or his reputation. He'd shaved off his signature beard and darkened his hair with temporary dye to ensure no one would recognize him. His assistant, Emma, was the only one who knew about his plan. Alexander wanted to immerse himself in this world, to understand the struggles and experiences of those overlooked by society and his own company. As Alexander roamed the city streets, he encountered his first obstacle. At a bustling coffee shop, he approached the counter hesitantly, clutching a handful of loose change. The barista, a young man named Jared, glanced at him with a mix of pity and impatience. "Can I just get a small coffee?" Alexander asked, his voice low. Jared frowned. "That's not enough, buddy. Maybe you should try the shelter down the street." A woman in line behind Alexander intervened. Her name was Grace, a middle-aged waitress from a nearby diner. "I'll cover it," she said firmly, placing a few bills on the counter. Embarrassed but grateful, Alexander mumbled a thank you. Grace handed him the steaming cup and sat with him at a corner table. "You're new around here, aren't you?" she asked. Alexander nodded, weaving a vague story about losing his job and being evicted. Grace nodded knowingly. "Happens to a lot of good people," she said. "You just hang in there." Over the next few days, Alexander encountered a range of reactions. Some people avoided him, their faces stiff with judgment or fear. Others, like Grace, offered small acts of kindness. He met Liam, a teenage runaway who had been living on the streets for 2 years, and Donna, a retired schoolteacher who'd lost her savings to a medical scam. One evening, as Alexander sat on the curb near a bustling park, he noticed a group of Hunt Tech employees exiting a nearby office building. They were laughing and chatting, oblivious to his presence. Intrigued, Alexander followed them at a distance and overheard their conversation. "I can't believe they're slashing our benefits again," one employee grumbled. "And the CEO? He's probably sitting in his penthouse, counting his millions." Another chimed in, "Yeah, it's all about the shareholders. They don't care about us." Alexander's stomach sank. He knew his company had made tough decisions to stay competitive, but hearing the resentment firsthand was sobering. One rainy afternoon, Alexander found himself in a crowded homeless shelter. He struck up a conversation with a man named Pete, a former construction worker who'd been injured on the job and left without support. "They just tossed me aside," Pete said bitterly. "Big companies don't care about people like us. We are disposable." Alexander felt a pang of guilt. How many Petes had his company overlooked? The turning point came when Alexander witnessed a heated argument between Jared, the frustrated barista from the coffee shop, and his overbearing manager, Mr. Barnes, on his next visit to the shop. Jared had been reprimanded for giving free coffee to homeless patrons like Alexander. "These people need help," Jared protested. "And we need profit," the manager shot back. Alexander intervened, surprising both men. "Maybe you should think about what kind of business you want to be," he said quietly. Jared's manager scoffed. "What would you know about running a business?" Alexander didn't respond, but the encounter stayed with him. That particular encounter left a strong impression on him, highlighting the struggles of workers who were undervalued and exploited, a sharp contrast to his world of boardrooms and executive decisions. A few days after his visit, Alexander made a deliberate decision to return to the coffee shop. By then, he had built a rapport with several homeless individuals in the area, including Grace, who often shared her insights about life and survival. Alexander wanted to check on Jared, whose defiant stand against his manager had resonated with him. He was curious about whether Jared still had his job and if his situation had improved or worsened since their first meeting. When Alexander walked back into the shop, he noticed Jared working with a sense of quiet determination. There was tension in the air, and it seemed that Mr. Barnes was watching Jared closely, likely holding a grudge after their prior confrontation. Alexander ordered a coffee and sat at a corner table, observing the interactions in the shop. During this third visit, Jared approached Alexander during a brief break. Recognizing him as the quiet, observant man from before, Jared thanked him for not intervening during the argument, explaining that he needed to fight his own battles. Their conversation deepened, with Jared opening up about how he was working 2 jobs to support his ailing mother and younger sister. Alexander admired Jared's resilience and began to see a reflection of his own younger self, who had hustled and struggled to build a better life for his family. It was also during this visit that Alexander learned more about Grace. Jared mentioned her as a regular customer who often struggled to make ends meet but never lost her kindness or dignity. Grace had left a profound impression on both men, and this shared connection brought Alexander and Jared closer. This visit solidified Alexander's resolve to address the systemic issues he was witnessing. It wasn't just about Jared's strained relationship with his manager, it was about the larger problem of undervalued labor and how corporations like his own might be perpetuating such inequities. The coffee shop became a symbolic backdrop in this story, where Alexander's transformation began and his growing understanding of people's struggles took shape. It was here that he decided to take the lessons he'd learned back to Hunt Tech and redefine what success meant for himself and his company. At the end of his 2 weeks on the streets, Alexander returned to his office, deeply changed. He called an emergency meeting with his executive team and shared his experiences. "We've lost sight of our values," he said, his voice firm. "It's time to change that." Under Alexander's leadership, Hunt Tech launched new initiatives to support employees and invest in community programs. They partnered with organizations to provide job training for homeless individuals who were ready and willing to get job trainings, and created a fund to assist employees facing financial hardships. In the next couple of weeks, Alexander returned to the coffee shop where he'd met Grace and Jared, this time in his usual attire. Jared's eyes widened in awe but couldn't figure out where he had met this person before. "You are..." Jared began, but Alexander held up a hand. "Just a customer," he said with a smile. "And a grateful one at that." Alexander also visited Pete at the shelter, offering him a position in Hunt Tech's new outreach program. "You've got a lot to teach us," Alexander said as he revealed himself to Pete. Pete hesitated at first, not knowing if it was real or not, but when he realized that it for real, he then shook Alexander's hand, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Others at Hunt Tech eventually discovered that Alexander had gone undercover, but it wasn't an intentional revelation on his part. The discovery came during a pivotal moment when Alexander decided to present the lessons he learned while undercover to the company's leadership team and employees. However, the way the truth unfolded added an emotional and dramatic layer to this story. After returning to Hunt Tech, Alexander began implementing changes based on his experiences, such as improving employee benefits, initiating leadership training, and launching community outreach programs. These changes stirred curiosity and even skepticism among some employees and board members who questioned the sudden shift in the CEO's priorities. Emma, the only one who had known from the start, advised Alexander to share his journey with the company. However, Alexander was hesitant, fearing the disclosure might appear performative or diminish the authenticity of the lessons he had learned. The turning point came during a company-wide meeting where Alexander unveiled a new program aimed at hiring individuals from underserved communities, including the homeless. To emphasize the importance of empathy and understanding, he shared anonymous stories from the people he had met while undercover, stories about survival, resilience, and dignity in the face of adversity. One employee, Jared, who had recently joined Hunt Tech as part of the outreach initiative, recognized the stories and pieced together that Alexander was the homeless man he had met at the coffee shop. Jared, visibly moved, stood up and asked Alexander directly in front of the audience, "Were you undercover? Were you that man who came into the shop?" The room went silent. Alexander took a deep breath, realizing he could no longer keep this part of his journey hidden. With humility, he admitted to the undercover experience, explaining why he had taken such an unconventional step and what he had learned from it. The reaction was mixed at first. Some were in awe, others were skeptical. But as Alexander continued, sharing raw and heartfelt moments from his journey, the skepticism melted away. He described the hardships he witnessed, the humanity he encountered, and how those experiences reshaped his perspective as a leader. In the days that followed, the story spread through the company like wildfire. Employees felt a renewed sense of pride in working at Hunt Tech, and many shared their own stories of personal struggles, inspired by Alexander's vulnerability. The revelation also brought unexpected challenges. Some media outlets picked up the story, with varying interpretations. While many praised Alexander's commitment to understanding the struggles of everyday people, others criticized it as a publicity stunt. Alexander faced the backlash head-on, emphasizing that his intention was never to seek recognition but to become a better leader. Ultimately, the revelation strengthened Hunt Tech's culture. Employees appreciated Alexander's willingness to connect with people on a human level, and his actions, both during and after his undercover experience, proved that his intentions were genuine. Emma remained his unwavering supporter throughout, ensuring that the company's narrative focused on the meaningful changes they were making, rather than just Alexander's personal journey. Alexander, the homeless man who now walking through the city streets, not as a CEO, but as a man determined to make a difference. Hunt Tech now becoming a symbol of corporate responsibility and compassion, Alexander's undercover journey, which was once a secret, became a cornerstone of the company's legacy, inspiring other leaders to prioritize humanity alongside profitability. As this story comes to an end, one question continues to linger in the minds of most people. How many percentage of companies out there would prioritize its employees' welfare over profits? Let us know in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to Home of Stories TV. And do not forget to turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories.